The most important aspect of sustainability as I see it is circularity. Every building component that is not circular and everything that is still made with very heavy building elements, especially with the premise of reinforced concrete, has to stop. If we move towards a structural form of building with lighter elements, then they will see that the carbon emission will automatically collapse. I mean, I'm not talking about a decline, I mean a collapse.
In fact, it was very much embraced by the intellectuals of the construction sector, and I think it received more attention than any other part of the world. Especially our colleagues, architects, have embraced it very much. Even by our mechanical and electrical teams, we have friends and groups that have come to a very advanced stage, but this should be a whole. I mean, training should be provided so that all segments of the public respond to it. Now, when you put two garbage bins here and say, recycle this plastic, this paper, it doesn't work. There's no industry for it. For example, in Germany, you cannot throw the cardboard waste of a refrigerator cardboard into the garbage in the garden or the sidewalk, because there are penalties. Since there are no complementary incentives on the state side, it is very much up to the instance of the investors, administrations, or the owners. But apart from that, it is really very advanced. There are so many places where you can get a lot of such services, and they're increasing. There's great interest, as you can see. But there are the legal regulations. I mean, as long as they are not completed, it is not a wasted effort. But we see the benefits in certain constructions, in certain regions, one by one. But this is not possible with the state only. I see that the big funds are not interested in the legal system here, the trade system. I mean, I see that many complementary elements do not work. They do not say for those who get the certificate. The loan is for 50 years, not 25 years or 10 years, not at 2% interest, but at 0.76% interest. I regret to say that unless that happens, because you ask my personal opinion, no matter what we do, and we have a lot of projects, there are accredited organizations, we do accredited projects, but only to the extent that we can convince the investor, to the extent that he can afford it, and to the extent that we do not get stuck as a result of the rules in contact with the state institutions. A cooperation is made. Is it made? Yes, but it is too low, too insufficient. But to facilitate it, the legal regulations and the commercial formation, that is the banks lending to be internationally recognized and so on. Now, of course, since 2004, we've been following a number of design enrichments that we've been following very closely from the very beginning, thanks to Acıbadem, and by improving ourselves over time with many things we have learned from them. The healing environment in the early 2000s and the first years, then healing environmental effects, spatial areas, inclusive well-being design, by explaining them passionately and as much as possible. As our weakness is that in metropolitan areas, such as Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir, especially in the most valuable parts of the city, as we provide a lot of services in the private health sector, they are built on very valuable buildings or lands. There are a lot of problems with zoning, sidewalk elevations, entrances and exits. We're trying to minimize these. And while we are doing this, I don't know, one of them, you come by car or you come from the road, we try to enter straightly, but sometimes you can't do that in some places. You make very strange ramps. This is one of the most important elements we try to prevent. A person with special needs takes the escalator or go up that ramp. Even the places to enter and exit together were a problem. So these design enrichments are very important. It exists. Everyone can access it now. We went to their seminars. We still follow them. Especially in the team, there are colleagues like me who love it very much. We make these design enrichments as much as possible by examining everything holistically. But we don't do some of them in the form of an interior arrangement or architectural completion by exaggerating the design. But sometimes it can be perceived that way. The most important aspect of sustainability is the circularity as far as I see. Now, as long as you still take the shale clay layer, which is still the most valuable part of the soil, and still make bricks from terracotta and carry them to the constructions, you carry it, okay, then when the walls of that construction collapse, that terracotta part can be sorted out and turned into chamotte. It can be turned into the raw material of that sector again. I don't know, as we see in Europe, various construction wastes can be turned into chamotte landscaping pavement by manipulating the granular metric. Unless you do this, the discussion of what constitutes sustainability is still irrelevant, still up in the air. So I'm shocked to see that nobody's saying stop that brick factory. It can be made for some special unique projects or something, but the industry is still going on. We're still discussing aerated concrete. Interior partitions are still being made with aerated concrete or brick walls. The entire world has encountered another advanced phase of sustainability. We only work on certain projects, on certain elements. When a foreign company, say an American, British, German company, comes here, they look at it a little bit. Here, we'll do it with sustainability principles. Lightweight panels, interchangeable, less waste materials, or remanufacturing of the wastes so that they do not pollute the nature, etc. Even the Venice Biennale a few years ago was about this.
As you know, so every building component without circularity and everything that is still made with very heavy building elements, especially with the premise of reinforced concrete, concrete is very beautiful, of course. I'd like it very much, but at some point, it has to stop.
By polluting everywhere with concrete, it's also a very problematic material to recycle. There are so much to say, but again, I look at such discussions now, okay, let's reach sustainability. Which documents will we get? We will do this, we will do that, but we can't. We can't. For example, in many facilities that we work, we still cannot perform the gray wastewater management. We still take all the water, fresh water, and we end up sending it to the sewage for treatment as it is. We can manage it in so few facilities. When you see this, it makes you sad. And of course, concepts remain academic. We talk about it. But when you also ask what your current situation is, one foot is idle, always living with 3 legs. Not 4, but 3 legs. After my university graduation, I had the opportunity to examine radial wooden beams in part of my master's thesis. There are still none. There are still German sources, Italian, some French. We're still living on such a heavenly land. We have forests, we have many facilities, but we have thousands of construction companies. We're doing constructions all over the world. Turkey is proud to be an important actor in the construction business. But whether we are really good at it is controversial. This field is the same. We could have a very good wood sector as Turks. We could have factories producing laminated beams. It's always expensive for us. Why? We probably haven't developed our forests, made them economical. We have a lack of sustainability there. We have just cotton consumed. We're still discussing, and there are a lot of meaningless things. Right now, it's coming from the north, from Yakutia, Russian pine, etc. That is also a circularity. We cannot manage the cost by importing. It would not be economical, and accessibility is also a problem. So there's a deficiency there too. Also, we should be good at steel too, which we have a lot. Despite all this, I'm still very hopeful. Still so much good work is happening. Some of our architect friends are doing great works with steel or wooden structures. This means that there are so many qualified architects and construction teams. But a little bit, as the sector is not developing in Turkey now, the economy does not fit the general cost of constructions. But we have intellectuals who can do it. But how do we attract investors there? How do we convince them? And right now, I see some funds investing in forests and woodlands, but these are so few. Maybe if they flourish, then we can switch to wood. We are in a country where we are struggling with earthquakes all over the country. Wood, for example, should be and should have been a lot. We can still do that. But as I said, I honestly don't see much. For example, a value that has risen to the top in this pandemic is that the tiny houses or containers of many companies which can be supplied and set up very quickly has developed rapidly, and that is something to be proud of. These are all around the world, but it is incredible in Turkey. From Adana, Erzurum, I see a great development from small towns. I see some companies building small units while others have developed seriously. In fact, one of them is building a hotel on the Aegean coast by adding each other. It is huge. Steel has also turned into structural steel. That's where circularity starts. Waste materials, discarded steel, recycled to the structural steel as thinner sections, and this is circularity by converting from scrap. For example, wood materials are the same. Particle boards, etc. New materials started to emerge with many production models. Of course, there's also Kevlar, carbon, etc. that we cannot ignore at all. Everyone hates plastic and oil. But these also contribute a lot. As structures become lighter, I think we cannot explain this. We cannot explain it to the public. We cannot tell the businessmen, funds, or state organizations that invest in the construction sector. If we move towards a structural form of building with lighter elements, especially in building materials, especially concrete, even moving away from steel, then they will automatically see that one of the biggest criteria of sustainability is carbon footprint. Carbon emission will collapse in an instant. I'm not talking about a decline. It will collapse. But we have nothing in that sense. Even in schools, even in academia, it is almost non-existent. There are so many reputable chairs and departments. Professors are studying. We have engineers. Today, wood structure is good. Steel is good. They didn't used to exist. I mean, years ago, but there are many and they do a lot of work abroad. I know that we have colleagues who make steel bridges. There are such engineers. A lot of our colleagues are doing work in other geographies with wooden structures, but there is a problem here. But I'm hopeful that we have come from none to a few. I think we'll multiply from a few. It will inevitably happen anyway. The world is uniting. In terms of funds, you will use a fund, a money, and when the financier, the investor who gives it says, comply with this criteria, then it starts in that point. Undoubtedly, Corbusier was the first one I encountered, technically speaking, in my school days. I was very impressed. As a beginning, I think it was very important when you think about that period. And still, I follow him passionately. I look at him. Corbusier is an architect which I try to read and understand. He influenced me a lot. And then there's Renzo Piano, again, a little bit before my school days. Something incredible happened at the Pompidou, this famous cultural center in Paris. We were very impressed. Apart from him, Foster, for sure, is one of the architects I always follow and admire and try to understand the most.